Good morning, it's 3 minutes past 2, Tuesday the 16th of June. This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation. I'm Darren Adam with you till 4 o'clock this morning. When lockdown begun, it was obviously about protecting physical health and protecting the NHS, but also about ensuring the NHS would continue to be able to look after us all and any physical health concerns, be they coronavirus related or otherwise, that happen to arise. The focus was, as an emergency measure, on making sure as few people as possible caught coronavirus and suffered the physical health consequences. Now, we did step into an emergency situation. As you will recall, just a few months ago, we were told we couldn't leave the house other than for essential work purposes. Absolutely told not to leave the house if yourself or anyone that lived with you was suspected of having coronavirus. This was the new normal, if you will, from the 23rd of March. That level of restriction is bound to have, and has plainly had, an effect on people's mental health. The very strangeness of those circumstances. It would be extraordinary if there had not been a mental health price to pay. And that needs to be remembered, actually. When we talk about lifting the lockdown and people say, well, if you lift it too early, then you're prioritising the economy over people's health. What that ignores is the damage that's being done to mental health by the lockdown. It's not zero cost in terms of health to keep the lockdown in place, to keep restrictions in place. That has a mental health consequence, whether it's something that's triggered by not being able to see a loved one, whether it's triggered by not being able to go to work and earn money, or at least worrying about not being able to earn money. Whatever the reason is, lockdown is certainly not cost-free when it comes to the impact on people's mental health. I mean, there are physical health implications of that as well, but it's the mental health implications that we want to focus on this morning, and indeed in future mornings as well. This morning sees the first of our regular mental health phone-ins, and my guest, welcome to the show, is Noel Mcdermott of the Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group. Noel, good morning to you.
Morning, Darren. How are you?
Very well indeed, and I trust you are too, and thank you for your time this morning. The number, if you want to speak to Noel, is 0345 6060 973. Any questions that you have for Noel about your mental health, or maybe you're worried about someone else who, during this period has not seemed themselves. Maybe a nascent mental health concern has been triggered or exacerbated by the, again, very strange circumstances in which we have found ourselves. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, tweet at LBC, email darren@lbc.co.uk. And, of course, you can use whichever name you like. You can give me no name or a false name if you want to change your location as well. That is all perfectly fine as you speak to Noel this morning. So, Noel, just if you can, a little about yourself and also your area of expertise, I guess, and the sort of area of questioning that you'll be comfortable in.
I'm a mental health professional, qualified psychotherapist. Been practicing over 25 years now, and worked in a range of areas. Worked in the NHS for many years in adult mental health and outpatient services, and also social services, schools, etc. And now in the sort of what we call the independent sector, working across a range of mental health problems from adults to children to families, etc. So a broad range of experience from me.
Okay. And one of your colleagues in the field, I forget who it was, but I was very struck by what they said a few weeks ago, said that they were expecting, regrettably, a mental health tsunami, or a tsunami of mental health issues as a consequence of lockdown. Are you seeing signs of that, and do you suspect they might be right?
Yeah, it's something I've said myself. There was Royal College of Psychiatrists did a quick phone around of all its members about what they were experiencing, and every single psychiatrist was reporting not only more, but a broader range of people coming into developing mental health issues, and also increased severity in those issues as well. So some very troubling signs out there. So people who may have been, managing quite well prior to the lockdown, finding themselves coming into and then coming out of the lockdown, feeling in a very, very sort of bad way at the moment. So yes, lots of concerns, and not just concerns. Obviously, there were concerns for frontline health workers the impact upon them, and also other essential workers, people who are working in shops and etc. So we knew that was going to sort of put strain upon people, but it's been much broader, and we've seen that in all the countries that have come out of lockdown prior to us. So we were seeing it in China and Italy, etc. The data that was coming out was quite significant.
Are we seeing mental health issues arise in people who never considered themselves to have a mental health concern before?
Absolutely, without a doubt. That's what the data is showing us. So the pool of people who experience mental health challenges or psychological distress has grown much broader, significantly much broader during these times. And unsurprisingly, I guess, because every aspect of our life was affected by the lockdown. So we have these things called resilience factors in our life, those things that enable us to psychologically be bounced back, if you like, give us elasticity. And those things include, a stable home life, a stable work life, a stable connection with friends. Every single area there was affected during the lockdown, during the pandemic. So that in general, people have found that their resilience factors have been low. And although we can survive something, pretty easily for a few weeks, once you get into months, that's long term psychologically.
It must be quite scary as well for somebody who's either never considered themselves to have had a mental health concern, or indeed have never had a mental health concern, to suddenly find themselves in that position for the very first time. That must be a scary place for someone to be. Yeah,
and often it won't present in ways that people think of as a mental health problem. So often mental health problems present themselves as either physical problems, so we're having trouble sleeping, we're having trouble with our appetite, our weight suddenly changes, or it presents itself in other ways, such as we suddenly find ourselves arguing with our loved ones much more, or we've started drinking a bit too much, etc. So that's how it often presents. So it may not be sort of noticeable at first. Just think, oh God, this is just, things aren't going so well for me. And that's one of the big problems, really, is that it presents in those ways. We don't really notice it. We don't cue ourselves into asking for the help for it from the people who can help. And it can get quite chronic quite quickly. And chronic just mean more complicated. So at the initial stages, what we call the acute stage, of its first presentation, that's really, as a mental health professional, that's one to want to be involved, because the evidence is if you can get it at that point, you're going to knock it on the head pretty quickly, and it won't come back, and you'll learn from it. And that's why programs like this are so important.
Sure.
Well, we get that message out to people.
And you are, of course, very kindly at anyone's disposal this morning. Noel Mcdermott standing by to answer your questions. 0345 606 0973. You can text 84850, tweet at LBC, email Darren at lbc.co.uk. And if you have been listening to this and you've been perhaps thinking, you know what, this has affected me in ways, the lockdown has affected me in ways that would never have crossed my mind to even be possible just a few months ago, and there's something you want to run past Noel, you can do that. It's completely free. As I say, you can stay anonymous or use a different name, different identity, different location, whatever you want. 0345 606 0973, text 84850, tweet at LBC, email Darren at lbc.co.uk. First question comes from Lawrence, who has texted to say, hi Darren and Noel, I have a friend who has been addicted to gambling during and since the lockdown. He's found it difficult to get out of a cycle of spending money. Any tips to, as Lawrence puts it, Noel, maybe take his mind or keep his mind off this addiction?
Yeah, it's a real challenge at this time for people who have online issues. Gambling addiction is real. Gamble Aware is an organisation that can help with tips, etc. Don't underestimate how serious it is. Gambling addiction is one of the sort of major areas rising in addiction work at the moment, because it's so easy and so available through our phone, through the computer, etc. The first step in dealing with any sort of problem like that is to recognise that there is a problem in the first place. And I wonder if you've talked to your mate about it yet, about what your concerns are. If I was you, you're going to talk to them, and it's a good idea to start talking to them, is to arm yourself with facts. So get online. The Gambling Commission are very aware of these issues. I know. I was in a meeting with them about 3 weeks ago, talking to them. I'm a trustee of a charity that deals with families affected by addiction, and we were talking to the Gambling Commission about that. So arm yourself with the facts first, so that you understand what the issue is. Get on the sort of gambling website, the Commission's website. Arm yourself with information about it. Approach a friend in a non-judgmental way. It's really, really important. All forms of addiction, but in some ways, in particular, gambling addiction involve quite a lot of shame on the part of the person who's doing it, and also maybe quite a lot of denial that there is a problem and the extent of the problem. And so it can be, a very touchy subject for people. It can also feel, quite anxiety provoking in you as somebody who's going to approach somebody and worried about their reaction. So it's really important that you come to it at a time when you feel, quite grounded yourself. It's non-accusatory. Understand that, even if it's somebody that you're very close to, that ultimately that person has to make a decision that they want things to change. They have to acknowledge that there's a problem. So don't overinvest really in trying to sort out their problem. But you can, at the very least, be somebody who sows a seed in the mind of somebody else that maybe there is a problem, and that maybe that they need help. There's plenty of help out there. And addiction and gambling addiction is something that is, really well understood. And there are plenty of organisations that can help. Again, the Gambling Commission will sort of point you in the direction of them. But there's lots of other sort of treatment providers and organisations that will help. So you won't be alone in this. There's Gamblers Anonymous. Yes, that does exist. And it's, as it says on the tin, it helps people that have problems with gambling, just like Alcoholics Anonymous. And gambling addiction is very much thought by those of us that work in the field in exactly the same way as we think about other forms of addiction, whether that be to substances or to alcohol, etc. And the treatments provided are along those lines. So find a good time to talk to your friend.
Yeah, I was going to say, I suppose as well, Noel, that Lawrence, I hope that's been useful. But I suppose that if you do have a friend or a loved one or a family member who is struggling with an addiction at this time, that because of the very strange times that we are in, there might be an additional defensiveness if you approach that person. They might say something like, well, what else am I going to do? There's nothing else to do at this point. I might as well gamble. I might as well drink. I might as well indulge in whatever the addiction is. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, particularly in first presentation, people are not understanding that it could become a problem because people are not aware, I think, or maybe are defensive around the idea that's how quickly things can become a problem. Gambling in particular is one of those addictions where the thought in the mind of the addict is to do more to solve it, because, gambling addiction produces debt, and so the addict will then think, well, if I just gamble a bit more, I'm going to get out of it. Unlike other addictions where you can explain to people the more you do, the worse it gets, but the gambling addict can uniquely get caught up in that mindset. I think it is an issue at the moment that people have stronger defenses, Darren, that's what we call it, against understanding that it's a problem, because they will be viewing the pandemic, the lockdown, as a temporary measure, and this is what I'm doing for now. It's not really a problem, but it's not the way our brain works, unfortunately. Neurologically, temporary becomes permanent relatively quickly, and that's what people don't understand.
And of course, the lockdown is ending. We will be emerging from this period regardless. Noel, standing by with your questions this morning, got answers to your questions. Noel Mcdermott, the founder of Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group, answering your questions on the impact of the last few weeks on your mental health. 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850, tweet at LBC, email darren@lbc.co.uk. Even if you don't have a question as such, even if you just want to run the way that you've been feeling past Noel, that is perfectly fine as well. And again, one of those conversations where I suspect if you pick up the phone and call 0345 6060 973 and have that conversation, it might just be of incredible use to maybe someone who's only started listening, who doesn't quite feel ready to pick up the phone themselves, but they can hear that conversation and know that they're not alone. Maybe what you're going through or have gone through, or someone that you know is going through or has gone through, will be of use to someone else listening this morning. 0345 6060 973. Noel Mcdermott standing by to take your calls and answer your questions as they continue here on LBC in just a moment. 0345 6060 973. My guest this morning is Noel Mcdermott, the founder of Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group, answering your questions on mental health and the impact of the last few weeks and months on your mental health and our mental health, and the best way to proceed, to do all we can to sort of head off that tsunami that's been talked about, the tsunami of mental health concerns that many professionals feel is imminent. We've had an email from Sonia. This is not her real name, Noel, and she's concerned about her daughter, who is 9. And Sonia says her daughter's a very smart 9-year-old, as many 9-year-olds are, has been following the news in great detail, and is worried about returning to school. Now, being 9 years of age, that's not something that's imminent for her yet, but she really is quite worried about COVID-19, Sonia's daughter is, and quite concerned about the health implications. And Sonia feels, as her mum, essentially, that this is going to be problematic when time to return to school comes. What can mums and dads do? What can parents do in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, she's not alone. I think that's the first thing to say, that there's a lot of people worried about that. First, the health side of things. We need to sort of, what I've just done is an example of what we call normalizing. It's really important that when people have anxieties, that they understand that it's pretty normal to have anxieties at times like this, and it doesn't indicate necessarily that there's something wrong with them. That, anxiety is a normal reaction to an abnormal situation, which is the one that we're in. So many people are anxious and worried about the change from lockdown to us opening up. And in some ways, lockdown was safer, and we felt a lot safer because we were at home, we were looked after. There were very simple messages that we had to live by. Now the messages have got more complex as we come out of lockdown, and that has produced in itself more anxiety across the board. So it's understandable first, and when you're dealing with your children, it's really important to do that reassurance and just let them know that their feelings are okay and normal.
There's a complication here, isn't there? Because for very young people, for children, the medical risk that is presented by COVID-19, it's not zero, and there have been tragic exceptions to this, but if you're 9 years of age, then the chances of an adverse reaction because of coronavirus are pretty slim.
Yeah, and what I'm saying to people is that I think a lot of the anxieties that children are presenting at this time are more anxieties they've caught from the adults around them, because, as you say, for children, this virus isn't such a risk, and it may be that she's more worried about her infecting her parents and loved ones than she is really about herself. So I think often what I'm doing is encouraging parents to help kids unpack some of those worries. Of course, parents need to become more informed, which means getting on the government website to look at the risks. There's some great information there, and the World Health Organization has some great information. And the more informed you get about the actual slim risks that exist for children, the better you are at reassuring your child. It may be that these are normal anxieties about returning to school anyway. So kids,
particularly after an extended break.
Exactly. So kids after the school holidays would be a bit anxious anyway. And you as a parent, you're skilled at dealing with that anyway. You already know your job around that. So, and how you ground your child and ground their fears and anxieties and help them unpack what those fears really are about, to help them remind them, if you like, that they do have the skills. They've gone back to school before. It's been okay. Don't worry about it.
I was also struck as well over the weekend that in the Sunday Times, a letter from more than 100 specialists in psychology, mental health and neuroscience, as I say, but this letter published in the Sunday Times, urging specifically the Education Secretary, Gavin Williamson, to allow children to play together and continue their education by returning to school, preschool, college and university. So, again, a recognition that lockdown has mental health implications for people of all ages.
For children in particular, the loss of school is more of a problem than anything else. And getting schools open is really important for children's development. Children, for their normal development, need to be around complex social groups to help stimulate their neurological, emotional, relational growth. And, you know, for example, in war zones, the first thing we do in war zones is we get the schools up and running because they have such a protective factor for children. Yeah.
Noel Mcdermott is here. Noel, founder of Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group. 0345 6060 973. Let's go to Ian, who's in Eastleigh. Morning, Ian.
Good morning, young man. How are you this morning?
I'm very well indeed. It's a delight to hear from you, Ian, and speak to Noel, who's ready to take your call.
Good morning, young Noel. How are you this morning?
Hi, Ian. How you doing?
I'm struggling a bit. I've got various disabilities, you see. No, and I'm struggling because I haven't been able to see my sisters Karen and Debbie since about March.
Right.
We lost Dad about 2 years ago. And I go ring Karen and Debbie, and I
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. So
Okay.
Don't worry. And you see, no, I mean, this is why I just wish I could go to Aldershot or New Milton to see Karen and Debbie, and of course we're not allowed. And all I want to do is give them a big hug.
Is that the issue? Yeah.
Are you shielding
at the moment?
Pardon? Am I doing what, sir?
Shielding.
Are you shielding? Yeah.
No, with carers.
Right.
I haven't been out since around March,
Okay. So you're unable, Ian, to get to see your sisters, and that's what's obviously causing you such distress. And so I guess you're looking for some assistance in getting through this period until you can see them again.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Noel?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
I think one of the assistants, Ian, is sharing as you are now, and sharing your tears and your feelings about things. And it's really important to feel okay about doing that, particularly on a mental health phone-in. So you're not the first person I've talked to who's had emotions in the conversation with me. So it doesn't worry me. It's fine. Emotions are a good thing to have, and tears are a good thing to have. Your reactions to missing your sisters are perfectly understandable, mate. They're absolutely understandable. I think a lot of us feel that sense of loss as well, which is what you're experiencing. And it seems odd to say that we're going through grief during this time or loss during this time, but we are. We're going through the loss of the normal connection that we have to our loved ones. And so it's perfectly understandable that during these times, that many people like yourself are experiencing loss and grief feelings, which it sounds like you're going through, which can lead to tearfulness. It can also lead to feelings of anxiety, feelings of depression, feelings of sadness, and feelings of loneliness, as well as other more difficult feelings such as anger, abandonment, etc. So all of those types of feelings, all of those types of reactions are perfectly understandable at a time like this. I think you're doing exactly what you need to be doing, which is reaching out for help and communicating your feelings. The reason I was asking about whether you're in the shielded group is because if you're not, if your disabilities around don't preclude, of course now you can sort of begin to think about socialising with people.
Well, let's bring Ian back in on that. Ian, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, sir.
Yeah. So just remind us why you aren't able to go and see your sisters. Is that because you are in a household of more than one, or is it because you are shielding? What's the reason?
I'm in a special house.
So you physically can't get to them.
With very good carers, Jamie and Stephen Watts, and normally I could ring Karen and Debbie, and I do that.
Yeah.
Most days, but it's just not the same. Like I said, no, we lost my dad about 2 years ago, and it's affected all three of us slightly differently. Debbie remembers the birthday. I remember the day that he died, and I still feel guilt over that. And I'm kind of wondering whether I should try and get rid of the guilt, but I can't. It's difficult.
Well, what do you think Ian should do, Noel?
Well, clearly this is bringing up maybe some unresolved sort of grieving that you have around your father, which is unsurprising. And maybe you want to think about whether you want to talk to Cruse, which is an organisation that provide counselling. Cruse Bereavement Care are an organisation that provide counselling to people who've lost a loved one. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. There really isn't. There's only the way that you have. And maybe some support around your experience of losing your father would be, good for you at this time. And maybe that's the loss that you're experiencing that hasn't been processed. There's also, I think, think about how you can increase your contact with your loved ones. If you can't do it physically, think about how you might do it through reaching out on the telephone, getting onto Zoom or Skype call with them, and increasing your contact in that way. I would talk to your carers about it as well. They'll be very understanding about the situation that you're in. And I'm sure that you do talk to them, but they'll also be able to give you some counselling around that about your feelings on this one.
And Ian, the hope, of course, is that this is not going to be forever. There will be a point at which you can all be reunited. It must be desperately sad waiting for that moment to arrive, but it's getting closer every day. And maybe we can talk a little bit later, Noel, about focusing on the light at the end of the tunnel here. Ian, the very best of luck to you. Thank you for that call. Leslie is standing by with a question. We've got questions as well from Terry and Hannah and Mark and Tom and you as well on 0345 606 0973. You can text, you can tweet, you can email as well. My guest is Noel Mcdermott, founder of Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group, answering your questions on mental health issues this morning. A very quick reminder ahead of the news that the number for the Samaritans is, of course, 116123. Always happy to mention that number on this show if you ever need them. They're there 24/7, 116123, and they listen. They don't advise, they listen. And sometimes that is what is needed. If the strangeness, apart from anything else, the weirdness of the last few weeks and months has made you wonder, maybe for the first time, if your mental health is being treated as seriously and considered as to be as important as it should be. Noel Mcdermott, my guest this morning, founder of Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group, answering your questions. 0345 606 0973. Robert standing by in Kennington. Leslie first in Oxford. Morning, Leslie.
Hello. My my question is, I have Asperger's, okay,
Yeah.
and in my place of work, in the NHS, they've made face masks mandatory. But for someone with me, like Asperger's, like materials unfamiliar, the whole concept is unfamiliar. What advice would you have for someone like me?
Yeah, it's a challenge, that one. I mean, there's a balance of factors here. Ultimately, I think the issue is that you're going to have to find some way of managing your anxiety about dealing with this situation. I would suggest you talk to your employer and explain that you're struggling with this, and get in place support to help you manage the transition and the adjustment. I'm not going to tell you about your condition, you're an expert on it. For those that don't know, changes are very difficult for people who have Asperger's. But what I would say to you is that, of course, change is possible. It's not impossible for you. It's just more complicated, more difficult, and you may need more time and help to adjust to that change.
Leslie,
and your employer will help you.
Leslie, I was going to ask, just for anyone who's unfamiliar with precisely how this might work, and that could be a lot of people, would you be so kind as to explain to us why this unfamiliarity with the mask is something that would cause you distress?
Well, the whole concept really, so the unfamiliar material, so like people with Asperger's are more sensitive to kind of certain materials.
Right.
And just like the whole anxiety sort of thing, it makes you more anxious, basically.
And what do you do for a living, Leslie? You don't need to name your employer or anything, but what is it that you do?
I work in a lab.
You work in a lab, okay. So, and this would be new to you. There's not been a circumstance in which you'd have had to wear a mask before? Never,
ever before.
Okay. Do you think on you go now, sorry.
Well, just saying that, again, it's really important. Everybody's in the situation where this is new. And so it's not just your Asperger's. I mean, that is an important part of it, but it's also the fact that we're all in a new situation. So what I would say to you is that your employer is going to be very understanding about this. There will have been times, and you can remember them, when you've had to adjust to change, and you've done it very successfely. And so you will have coping mechanisms to do that.
It's taken me time, but there's lots of things I've done.
Yeah,
successfully.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband, he's tried bringing face masks home. My husband, he works too in the NHS. He's bought face masks back home in the early stages, and they've never worn them. I've always chucked them away.
Yeah, I mean, what will happen is...
I feel just as safe. It's familiar.
But what will happen in this situation is that your employer will be very, very sensitive to your needs and will allow you to do these things at your time. Particularly if it's the NHS, and they will make adjustments, as you know, to your workplace and to the way that you work. So it's really important that you remind yourself of that you're not in a situation where this is going to be forced upon you and you're going to have an either-or situation. It's not going to happen. So managing your anxiety around that is really important, as you know. That's part of what you do on a daily basis.
So what should I say to them? How should I raise it to them when they get thrust with a mask, like when they enter the building? Like how should I?
Well, I think you need to. First thing you do tomorrow is that you talk to your boss, you talk to your line manager about you are finding this transition a real struggle. They will have in place ways of helping employees that have extra needs, and you'll clearly qualify for that extra support. Once you start that process, they will sort of look at with you, as you have done in the past. I mean, you'll have gone through this with them before around other changes, I'm sure. They will look at a reasonable period of time to help you transition and manage your anxiety and any extra support you have around that. It's also, I think, think about what is around you in terms of the support network that you have. Are there other people, I'm sure, there will be people that that also have anxiety and issues similar to yours that you can sort of share the load with. And I wonder if for your Asperger's you have a specialist support.
No, I don't. I'm high functioning Asperger's, so I don't have any specialist.
Right. So just checking there to see whether there were other sort of psychologists in your life, etc.
And Leslie, I think in other contexts as well, we've spoken about employers making adjustments because, of course, they find all of this as strange as everybody else. We are in completely uncharted territory.
Sure it's a learning for them. Yeah, I'm pretty sure of that. Yeah.
Leslie, good luck. Thank you for the call. 0345 6060 973. Let's do a text. This is from Tom, who says, a couple of days ago, it was the anniversary of the Grenfell Tower fire, and I wanted to know what the best way would be to cope with the emotion of that anniversary without the support of a community that's come together since after the fire. Now, we think back to that dreadful day. It was only 3 years ago, Noel, but of course it will be an additional pressure to anyone affected by it in terms of their mental health.
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, I just pulled up my PTSD checklist because I knew the issue of trauma was going to come up. And, the Grenfell fire was a very traumatizing experience. And so is this current situation that we're going through. And so it's not surprising that people are remembering previous traumatic experiences. I mean, I think that, the most basic rule around all of this is to recognize that you're struggling and to start being really compassionate to yourself, or to recognize that somebody else is struggling and start being really compassionate to them as well, and to not beat yourself up or beat somebody else up because they're having a challenge at this time, and particularly to recognize that when people start talking about previous experiences, that this is what the mind does. Is that when we're in a currently stressful situation, it sort of goes back in time and starts to look at previous stressful experiences, partly because we just remember, but also partly trying to figure out, well, how did we get through that experience? And will what I did then be helpful now? So all of that is really normal, really understandable. And don't immediately jump into telling yourself that you've got a really, really serious problem, because I think a lot of the experiences that people are having now are understandable, normal reactions to a quite bizarre situation that we're in.
Yeah,
none of us have really been in this before.
Well, none of us have been anywhere like this before. I've been struck as well, Noel, that when we've talked about mental health before, there's a small number of people who, and I don't mean for a moment to imply that they are, enjoying this period or anything, but they extract not unreasonably a certain relief from knowing that the anxiety with which they live on a daily basis, the mental health concerns with which they've been living on a daily basis, are now being matched to a certain extent by the rest of the population. And weirdly, it's made them feel a little bit less alone. So any comfort they can extract from that is welcome, even though it arrives in very strange circumstances. 0345 6060 973. Noel Mcdermott, founder of Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group, answering your questions on mental health in just a moment. One of those comes from Robert in Kennington, standing by on LBC. 0345 6060 973. Noel Mcdermott answering your questions on mental health this morning. Robert in Kennington. Hello, Robert.
Hello, yes. If you bear with me a bit, I am on pregabalin and a few sleeping tablets that makes it very difficult to concentrate at the moment. But I am going to obviously use this opportunity for your expert to give me some help if he can.
Absolutely. Noel,
sure. Okay, so hi, yes. I have had mental health issues in the past, but it's not too long ago that my father died of stomach cancer, and I think what's happened in the past, where my mum has been very unwell, schizophrenic at Bethnal Royal, etc., etc., the issue that's happened after my father's name, I think all these issues have come to sort of some kind of impact with all what's happened in the past. I have had some bereavement counselling, but I think there was almost too many things going on, not just the bereavement as well. I'm just wondering if you can give me any sort of advice about how to go about the right type of therapy for that situation, or support, or whatever it might be.
Okay, so I presume you're on the pregabalin for anxiety.
Well, the stress, it has been suggested that I've got post-stress disorder after seeing the manner that my dad passed away from stomach cancer, etc. Yes.
Okay, so they think that you might have some sort of PTSD symptoms.
Yes. So, when I was told that my dad had stomach cancer, I thought, to be honest, it was going to be a year or so. It did be a lot longer, 5 years. That was wonderful that he managed to go on, but it was 5 years of that level of care that I had to give to him.
That's really challenging. Challenging. It's not surprising that you would have.
No, and he ended up in a hospital down in Clapham. To see him, he was still very mentally there, but to see him being strangled by this stomach cancer and see him, extinguishing out and all that sort of thing. In the past as well, that my mum, who is very mentally unwell, has tried, to be honest, to stab me, etc. So all of these things have all come to head, and then we went into lockdown.
Do you have things
then we got into lockdown? Yes.
So just very, so I don't want to really sort of open you up too much, but just very briefly sort of make a quick assessment and sort of think about your question, which is which direction do you need to go now? So generally, what are you disturbed by at the moment? Memories of this, dreams?
Yes,
are you having flashbacks?
I do wake up in the middle of... And I think what I'm remembering is a number of times that the doctors at St Thomas's Hospital were telling me I need to rush to get to the hospital now. It might be the last time you see him, this flight anxiety. Perhaps there might have been a suggestion that maybe some of the doctors could have dealt with it in a better way or have some kind of palliative care, the way that they supported me when I was rushing into hospital. This is all happening.
Given what you're sorry to cut across, but given what you're saying, it sounds like you might respond very well to some of the modern treatments for trauma, such as EMDR, for example. So, do you know about EMDR?
No, this is exactly why I was phoning up before.
Right. Okay. So EMDR, eye movement desensitization, is a modern treatment for trauma, and it helps very, very quickly in a very short space of time deal with reduce some of the disturbing symptoms. So things like flashbacks, memories, intrusion, all of those things. It can work very, very quickly, and you should be able to. I don't know your particular situation, but I always advise people in these types of situations, start with your GP before you jump onto Google and start Googling people. But you can go and find out some more information about it, certainly. EMDR is a sort of well-established evidence-based therapy. It doesn't involve having to go... A lot of people still have this old sort of Freudian notion of therapy that you lie on the couch and you spend endless years talking to somebody. Well, EMDR is very, very quick form of therapy, and there are the whole bunch of therapies around that, like EMDR or trauma-informed cognitive behavioral therapy, again, which give you practical emotional skills and resources in a very short space of time that will help you manage the uncomfortable symptoms that you're having. Okay.
But also on top of that, to be honest, I've never lived alone. So I've always either obviously been with my parents or gone with a partner, and then all of a sudden, boom, I'm on my own, and I'm finding certain managing problems, being on my own. I think it has got that and a wider need, I think, in order to progress and move forward.
Yeah, and I always suggest to people that, having a support network is absolutely crucial in any sort of recovery program. And they are available. The online groups are available, so you can get in touch with trauma survivors groups. There's an organisation called CODA that you might want to go and check out. You can get in touch with mental health support groups online. They've all shifted online, all these organisations. And so with a really short period of time of Googling support groups around your situation, you'll be able to find these Zoom groups and support groups that will help you reduce your isolation. Really crucial point.
Robert, I hope that's been of some use. Thank you very much for the question, indeed the questions. We've had a couple of other texts and emails, Noel, which are not dissimilar. I imagine much of the advice you've just given to Robert would also apply. Terry texting, I've been struggling while in lockdown. My wife unfortunately passed away with COVID. I've been grieving. I still don't feel safe to see my family, and I'm struggling. And also Angela, who texts to say, unfortunately, she also lost her partner to COVID-19, not handling it well, not being able to be there for him, see him and say goodbye. Will there be counselling available to advise how to cope with this highly unusual situation? We do have some other questions, but just a couple of words on that, because one of the really cruel tragedies of this period is that people have not been able to grieve properly in the traditional way. They haven't been able to, for example, have proper funerals. That's going to cause problems, isn't it?
It is. And I think, one of the things that we will see as a result of this are special ceremonies that sort of look at the victims and the people who've lost their lives during this time. It's been an extraordinary time with such a high death rate in such a really short space of time. And as you say, the usual sort of grieving methods have been put on hold. So I think as we come out of lockdown, we're going to see a call for, and I think it's right, a call for memorial services and days for people. What you can do immediately, though, if you're struggling with these types of symptoms that you're describing, is there is mental health services available. There's a thing called IAPT, Increased Access to Psychological Therapy. Sorry about the tongue twister, but that's what the NHS calls it, which is a free service you can get and you can self-refer into. The way you find it is very, very simple. If you type in IAPT into your browser, plus the name of your local authority or the area that you live in, it will take you directly to NHS-based mental health services that are called primary care, so you can self-refer. Usually what it will call itself is something what you're, say I was in Hackney, well I am in Hackney, it would then be Hackney Wellbeing Service. And then call itself something like that. And you can get immediate help. You can give them a call. They'll call you back. They'll do an assessment. And they'll get you into cognitive behavioural therapy to help you manage some of these symptoms now. And it's really important that if you are struggling with these symptoms, that you reach out and get help now. Sorting out at this point is the most important thing.
We have 2 minutes left, and I want to get a couple of questions in. So brief answers if you can on this, Noel. I know that might not always be possible, but an email which says, I have a 21-year-old son. As his dad, I'm concerned about his mental health. I cannot discuss his health with his doctor because he's above the age of consent. What direction would you advise that I take to ensure the help he gets?
Well, you need to sit down with him and tell him about your worries and see if he shares them. He is 21. Unless he agrees with you, there's very little you can do. That's a fact. So the most important thing is that you and he have a conversation about what your worries are and begin that conversation about how he can get help. He may not recognise. Most people who have mental health problems have an inability to see that they have them. And the first step is always to break through that denial. Or lack of insight is what we call it.
Sure. Hannah has texted to say, how do I rally the energy to do the little things that I can't make myself care about?
Wow. It's really, really difficult. Don't rally yourself. The best thing to do with depression, which is what you've got by the sounds of it, is put it in your diary and do things because they're in your diary. Particularly do those things that used to bring you satisfaction and joy. And even though you don't think they will this time, the more you do them, the more they will help get you out of this current situation, I promise you. So it's about practical things. Take action, put it in your diary and do it.
And there's time for again, just 30 seconds on this. Mark in Peckham, something that, again, in normal times, a lot of people probably do. We might file this under Dr. Google in normal times. Mark says, I'm struggling with health anxiety. Every time I get an ache or a pain or a headache, something doesn't feel quite right. I find myself getting very anxious, spending lots of time on the internet trying to diagnose the symptoms. A lot of this going on in the early days of coronavirus. What would be your advice to Mark?
get off the internet is the first thing. Stop diagnosing yourself by Dr. Google. You will make it worse. Right. If you need information, go to the official government sources and nowhere else. If you have coronavirus, there are a limited number of symptoms that you need to look at. If you don't have those, you don't have it. You're then in a position where you just need to manage anxiety. The problem you've got is anxiety, not your health. Lots of people have health anxiety. So learn relaxation techniques, learn meditation techniques. If your mind wanders off into your health anxiety, move it into something more productive and something more interesting and something more fun.
Noel, thank you very much for your time this morning. Noel Mcdermott, the founder of Noel Mcdermott Psychotherapy and Consultancy Group, joining me over the course of the last hour. Thank you very much for all the texts and tweets and emails and calls as well. And regularly on this programme, we should be looking at the issue of mental health. I suspect it is going to be something that's going to occupy our time more and more as we emerge from the lockdown.